Welcome to my channel Code View and Talk. Today in this video I'll be discussing a very important Spring Boot scenario based questions. So watch the video till end so that in the end you are able to get the solution to solve this scenario based questions. And this question is most oftenly asked in the interview as well. So if you are preparing for the interview, this video is going to be very helpful for you. So watch the video till end. So let's get started with the video. So let me go to the question first and then we'll discuss the solution about that questions. And in the end, I'll be also giving you a running code where I'll explain step by step process to solve this scenario based questions. So if you have any doubt, let me know in the comment section. I'll try to clear your doubt in the comment. So let's get started with the question first. So the question is, you have a REST API where users submit data via post request and you are using validations like at the not null, size on your request, or it can be any other validation as well. Here I have just given a example of not null and size. You can have like any other validation such as empty, length, etc. So it can be any validation which you put normally on the Pojo classes. So when error validation occurs by default, Spring throws a method not valid exception and it results in a standard 400 error with generic error message. So this is the scenario, and the question here is, you want to customize this response to return a nicely formatted JSON error response with details like error code, message, timestamp, etc. So I hope that you understand the questions, what question is telling. If you have not understand, then also it's fine. I'll be explaining in detail with the solution. So keep watching video, that will clear your doubt. So the question here is, it is saying that you have a REST API. To be specific here, I have taken a post request and you're trying to validate your field in the request so that when the field is not proper, it throws method not valid exception, which is default exception thrown by the Spring. But I want to throw my customize response where I can add error code, message, like proper message I want to add, so that when the exception is thrown, the clear message should be going to the client, like what is the issue in that request. So let's move to the solution. So in order to customize the validation error response in Spring, what we need to do is that we need to create a controller advice class and define an exception handler for method argument not valid exception. So we need to define a class, and that class we will annotate with the controller advice, and I'll be telling you couple of ways to customize your exception. So that I will explain in the demo part of this section. And in the handler, you have to build your response or a structured JSON response with field like timestamp, error code, message, and field specific validation error. So let's say we are validating multiple fields in the request. So in that case, we should be able to throw all the field exception. Let's say there are multiple fields and all the fields, or maybe like one or two fields, are not proper with the validation. So we should be showing the message for both the fields, or if the field is more than one field is not correct, so I should be sending a message for all of the field which are not correct in the request. So all those things we need to create that structured JSON when that exception is thrown. So all those things we will be seeing in the video now. where I'll be explaining you the uh, code. So this is the solution. If you have not understood this solution, or if you have any doubt in the solution or question, let me know in the comment section. So now let's move to the code, where I'll be telling like how to solve this problem in Spring Boot project. So let me go to the IntelliJ. So here you see this is my normal Spring Boot project, where you can see on the left side of it the folder structure which I have is controller, then we have repository, service, model, and the exception. So these are the folder structures. Just to give you the brief like what uh, this project contains, I'll just explain. So let me start with the model classes. So we have a class called employee, and you see this class I have made as an entity class, uh, uh, so that we can store the data in database, and table gets created when we run this Spring Boot project. We have mapped this Pojo classes with the entity and table, and we have @ id also, which will make this id as a primary key in the database. But here we are not talking much about the database and other things. Here the focus is on how to handle this custom exception when this validation is not proper. So here you see in the field I have kept some validation, where I have not null, email, not empty. So these are the validation which I put in the field, and if this field is not proper as per the validation, I should be throwing that custom error message, because by default Spring throws a standard 400 method not valid exception, which I have explained in the theory. So if you see here in the theory, when I explained like by default Spring throws method not valid exception, and we will customize this in the code that we are seeing it here. So I have this class employee class, where I have this field validation, and then it is normal like constructor, getter, and setters. And then I have a repository class for this employee Pojo class, and then I have a employee controller, where I have a post API. And if you see in the post API, I have annotated with this request body with @ valid annotation, so that my validation which I put on the Pojo classes should work as expected. And then we have service class. Let me go to the service. Here we have employee service. It's just that a service where we are calling this repository save method, so that it can store in the database. And in order to get this validation, like which dependency do we need to add in the pom.xml. So let me go to the pom.xml as well, so that when you implement, you should be knowing each and everything what needs to be done in order to handle this custom exception. So let me go through the dependency which I have added. So the dependency in the pom.xml, you can see that here we have a JPA dependency, then we have a Spring Boot starter wave, and then I have a Postgres database, so there is a dependency for Postgres, and then we have a test dependency. And for validation, the dependency which is needed is this Spring Boot starter validation. So if you want to do that validation in place, you need to add this Spring Boot starter validation dependency. So this is important from this video point of view. So because others, if you are making a Spring Boot project, you need to add this starter web dependency, and if you are using JPA and database, you need to add this data JPA dependency and database dependency, depending upon like which database you are trying to configure. Here I have PostgreSQL, so I have added for PostgreSQL. If you are using MySQL, then you need to add the dependency for MySQL database. But the catch here is, if you want to add this validation in place in your project, you need to add this Spring Boot starter validation dependency. So these were the Spring Boot project and steps which I have explained. Now I'll move on to like how do we make this standard, how do we customize our exception in this project or this scenario based questions. So that is the real questions which I'm trying to solve in this video. So let me first of all let me give you the demo without that custom exception. So this I have explained the project, what all file is there and what all dependency is required in order to handle this custom exception. So I have already written this custom exception class for this, which is this class custom response entity exception handler. This is my custom class. So first I will give you the demo without this custom response entity class. So let me comment this class and let me rerun this application, and so that this will give you the standard 400 response, because we are not customizing our exception here. So it should give you the default exception. Now so here you see I have this request where email is there, age and mobile, and name we are not passing. So if you go to your Pojo classes in the employee, you see in the name we have validation in place, not null. So name cannot be null, but we are passing null here. Let me pass this name as a null. Okay, now if I call this API, you see in the response we are getting 400, and this is the standard response which is thrown by the exception, and we are not sure like what is the issue here. So we want to throw a message such that it should tell you that exact issue what is in the request. So when we are sending this request to the server, here it is throwing a standard response which is just saying the bad request. It is not saying that which field has what issue. So we want to customize this response so that when this response is sent back to the client, it is clear that what is the issue in the request. So let's go back to the code now, and let me go to the custom class and let me uncomment. So let me disconnect for some time until the time I explain what this class is doing. So here you see I have created a custom class which is custom response entity exception handler, and we are extending a class which is response entity exception handler class. So in order to customize the response, we need to extend this class, and this class has a method called handle method argument not valid, and we need to override this method in order to customize our response in that exception. So, and we are annotating this class with the REST controller advice, and you see in this method handle method argument not valid, we have a method argument not valid exception and HTTP headers and HTTP status code and wave request, and we have created a map of a string comma object so that we can create our response and then send back to the client. So in this map which we have created, we are adding this timestamp which is local date time and now, and then status dot value which is coming from this status, and then we are trying to get the error message which we have put on the field validation. So we are this method is there like exception dot get binding result and get field errors. So this method get field errors will give you the error of all the field which are having issue in the request, and then we are streaming and then we are getting that field and that message. So this will give you the field and this will give you the message corresponding to that field, and then we are collecting it to the list, and then we are adding that into the map, and we are returning this response in the response entity with the body and status. So this is the way by which we can customize our response. So let me rerun the application and let's see now what is the response when we try to call this. Application failed to start. It looks like port 8080 is still in use, I think, somehow. So we need to kill that port because 8080 is already in use, it is saying. So for now what I can do is I can just change the port. I'll just change the port server.port equal to 8081 so that it runs on 8081 port. So now you see the application started on 8081, and now if I go here, and here in the request you need to change 8081, and you see now again we are trying to call the API with the same response. We know like name cannot be null. So now earlier the response was this. Now you see what is the response. So let me call, and here you see the response is completely changed. So here it is saying that status is 400, timestamp is this, and the errors which we have added, right? So it is completely telling like what is the issue in the request. So it is saying that name cannot be null since we are passing that null in the request. So we have a validation in place that name cannot be null. So this is exactly what we wanted to achieve in this scenario based question, so that this is telling clearly to the client like what is the issue in the request. So let's say if we have multiple field with the issue, I have a validation in email as well, so I'll just remove this at the rate. And now if I try to call this API, let's see what is the response. So here you see in the response, in the error message, it is returning a list which is having all the messages for the field which are not correct in the request. So here you see it is saying email must be a well formed email address, and these requests which are coming from the Pojo classes. So let me show you that as well. So here you see we are passing this name cannot be null. The same message is coming in the response, name cannot be null. And this message, since in the email we have not given any customized message, so it is returning the default message in the response, which is must be a well formed email address. So if you want to have a custom message, you can add that message here as well, so that you will get what message you have given here. So let me tell you that email is not valid. So let me rerun the application. Now if we go and try to hit this API again, here you see the message got changed for email. So this is how we will customize our exception with our own response, so that we know like what is the issue in the request. So this was one way by which we can do this. I have another ways as well which you can do in order to customize your response. So this was one way, by extending this response entity exception handler. If you don't want to extend this class, there is another ways by which you can do is by writing exception handler in the controller advice class. So let me show that as well. So for time being, I'll just comment this method and I'll just remove this class. I already have that method written as well, so I'll just explain. There is nothing much change from the implementation part of view, but it's just that if you don't want to extend that class, you can just have your own exception handler in this controller device class, and that this will also work as expected. So here you see it's just that we have another method, and this logic is same as it is from this previous method. There is no change in the logic part of it. It's just that we are having a different ways by which we can handle this. So we are just having this exception handler annotation on this method, and which is having this method argument not valid exception class. And then again we have a body here, then we are adding time status and then the message in that, and we're returning this body and bad request. So let me re-execute this application. So again it has started on 8081. Now if you go back and execute this, you see the error response is same. There is no change in that. So these are the two ways by which we can customize our exception response, and we can override default exception response, which was a standard response given by the Spring. So this was the solution with for the scenario based, and this question is very oftenly asked in the interview as well, like how do you customize your standard exception response. So this is how we will do it, and I hope that I was able to make you understand how to handle this custom exception. If you have any doubt or you have not understood any point or any step, let me know in the comment section. I can help you to understand there as well. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.